The grand ballroom of the Venetian palace glittered with 1,000 candles, their flames dancing across gilded mirrors and crystal chandeliers. Masks adorned every face, transforming nobles and commoners alike into creatures of mystery and intrigue. Among them moved a figure whose true identity would shake the very foundations of the kingdom. This was no ordinary masquerade ball. This was the stage upon which destiny would perform its most elaborate deception. Prince Alessandro di Monteverde was supposed to be dead. The official proclamation had been read in every town square across the realm. Tragic accident, riding mishap in the mountains, body never recovered. The kingdom mourned for exactly 3 days before his younger brother, Prince Dominic, assumed the role of heir apparent. The court moved on with remarkable efficiency, as courts always do when power shifts and new alliances must be forged. But Alessandro was very much alive. He stood now in the shadows of that same ballroom, watching the elaborate charade unfold before him. His mask was simple, elegant black leather that covered the upper half of his face, leaving only his jaw and lips visible. Nothing about his appearance suggested royalty. His clothing, while fine, was that of a wealthy merchant perhaps, or a minor nobleman from some distant province. He had spent 6 months perfecting this disguise, learning to walk differently, to speak with a slight accent, to become someone else entirely. The story of how he survived the assassination attempt was one of fortune and quick thinking. The hired assassins had indeed come for him in the mountain pass, just as his sources had warned they would. But Alessandro had prepared. He had switched horses with his most trusted guard, a man who bore a passing resemblance to the prince. When the assassins struck, they killed the wrong man. Alessandro, dressed in guard's clothing, watched from a concealed position as they confirmed their kill and departed. He watched as they took the signet ring from the dead man's finger, proof of their success. In that moment, standing over the body of a loyal servant who had died in his place, Alessandro made a decision. He would not return to the palace. He would not reclaim his position. Not yet. Something was deeply wrong in the kingdom, and the rot started at the very top. His own brother had ordered his death. Of this he was now certain. The question was why, and who else was involved in the conspiracy. For 6 months, Alessandro had moved through the kingdom like a ghost. He took the name Lorenzo Ferretti, a merchant dealing in fine fabrics and exotic goods from the East. This identity gave him access to noble houses, to the gossip of servants, to the whispered secrets that flowed through the merchant quarters like water. He learned things that Prince Alessandro could never have discovered. He saw his kingdom from the perspective of those who actually lived in it, rather than those who merely ruled it. What he discovered horrified him. The corruption ran deeper than he had imagined. His brother Dominic was merely a puppet, a weak-willed fool being manipulated by forces far more sinister. The true power behind the throne was Duke Marcello Santini, the king's chief advisor and a man Alessandro had once considered a trusted mentor. Santini had been planning this coup for years, carefully positioning his allies, eliminating obstacles, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The king, Alessandro's father, was dying. This was not public knowledge yet, but Alessandro had learned it through careful observation and discreet inquiries. The physicians were keeping him alive with increasingly desperate measures, but it was only a matter of time. When the king died, Dominic would ascend to the throne, and Santini would become the true ruler of the kingdom, governing through his puppet prince. But there was more. Santini's ambitions extended beyond mere control of the kingdom. He had been secretly negotiating with foreign powers, promising them trade concessions, military alliances, and territorial rights that would effectively sell the kingdom's sovereignty piece by piece. Within 5 years, the Kingdom of Monteverde would cease to exist as an independent nation. It would become a vassal state, its wealth plundered, its people subjugated. Alessandro could not allow this to happen, but he also could not simply reveal himself and reclaim his position. Santini had spent 6 months consolidating his power. The palace guard was now filled with his men. The noble houses had been carefully cultivated, their loyalties secured through bribes, threats, and strategic marriages. If Alessandro appeared now and declared himself the rightful heir, he would be denounced as an impostor and executed before sunset. No, he needed to be clever. He needed to use the same weapons that Santini had used against him: deception, manipulation, and careful planning. He needed allies, but he had to choose them carefully. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. The masquerade ball was the perfect opportunity. It was being held to celebrate Dominic's engagement to Lady Caterina Rossi, the daughter of the kingdom's wealthiest merchant family. The marriage would further cement Santini's control, bringing the merchant class firmly into his coalition. But it also meant that every important person in the kingdom would be gathered in one place, their faces hidden behind masks, their guards down in the spirit of celebration. Alessandro had spent weeks planning for this night. He had made contact with certain individuals, dropping hints, planting seeds of doubt, carefully constructing a web of intrigue that would culminate in this evening's events. Everything had to go perfectly. One mistake, one moment of recognition, and all would be lost. He watched as his brother Dominic entered the ballroom with Lady Caterina on his arm. Even behind his mask, Dominic looked uncomfortable, his movements stiff and awkward. He had never wanted to be king. As children, Alessandro had been groomed for leadership while Dominic had been allowed to pursue his interests in art and music. Dominic was not a bad person, Alessandro knew. He was simply weak, easily influenced, desperate for approval. Lady Caterina, on the other hand, was a revelation. Alessandro had never met her before his supposed death, but he had learned much about her in recent months. She was intelligent, educated, and politically astute. Her father had built his fortune through shrewd business dealings and careful cultivation of noble connections. Caterina had been raised to be a power player in her own right, and this marriage was the culmination of her family's ambitions. But Alessandro's sources suggested something interesting. Lady Caterina was not happy about this engagement. She had been given no choice in the matter. Her father had arranged it with Santini, and she was expected to comply. In private, she had been heard expressing doubts and frustrations to her closest confidants. This made her potentially useful. If Alessandro could reach her, if he could make her understand what was truly happening, she might become an ally, but approaching her would be dangerous. She was constantly surrounded by attendants and guards. Any suspicious behavior would be immediately reported to Santini. Alessandro moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting a glass of wine from a passing servant, exchanging pleasantries with various guests. His accent was perfect, his mannerisms unremarkable. He was just another wealthy merchant enjoying the festivities. Nobody gave him a second glance. The music swelled and couples began to form for the first dance. Alessandro watched as Dominic led Caterina onto the floor. They moved together stiffly, without warmth or connection. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. Around them, other couples swirled in elaborate patterns, their masks creating a dreamlike atmosphere of mystery and romance. Alessandro felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find a woman in an elaborate peacock mask standing beside him. Her dress was deep blue and green, shimmering with embroidered feathers. Her lips curved in a knowing smile. "Signor Ferretti," she said softly, "I believe we have mutual friends who suggested we should speak." Alessandro's heart rate increased slightly, but his expression remained calm. "Indeed, and who might these mutual friends be?" "Those who remember the true heir to the throne," she replied. "Those who believe that justice has not been served." This was the moment Alessandro had been waiting for, but it was also the moment of greatest danger. This woman could be a genuine ally, or she could be a trap set by Santini. He had to proceed carefully. "These are dangerous words to speak even at a masquerade," he said quietly. "All the more reason to speak them while faces are hidden," she replied. "Walk with me to the terrace. We have much to discuss." Alessandro hesitated for only a moment before offering his arm. They moved through the crowd together, just another couple seeking fresh air and privacy. The terrace overlooked the palace gardens, now dark except for scattered lanterns hanging from trees. The sounds of the ballroom faded behind them. "Who are you?" Alessandro asked once they were alone. The woman removed her mask, revealing a face he recognized immediately. Sofia Marcelli, the daughter of Count Marcelli, one of the kingdom's most respected nobles. Alessandro had known her since childhood. She had been a friend, though never particularly close. What was she doing here, speaking of treason and lost heirs? "I know who you are, Alessandro," she said simply. "I recognized you the moment you entered the ballroom. You walk like your father, even when you try not to. You have his bearing, his presence." Alessandro's hand moved instinctively toward the dagger hidden beneath his coat. If she told anyone, everything would be over. Sofia raised her hand in a calming gesture. "Peace, my prince. I am not your enemy. I am here to help you." "Why should I trust you?" Alessandro asked, his voice hard. "Because my father was the first person Santini tried to recruit for his conspiracy," Sofia replied. "When my father refused, Santini had him poisoned. It was made to look like natural causes, a sudden illness. But I know the truth. I have been investigating for months, gathering evidence, building a case. When I heard rumors that Lorenzo Ferretti was asking unusual questions, making certain inquiries, I began to suspect. And then I saw you tonight, and I knew." Alessandro studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. He saw only earnest determination and barely suppressed anger. Her father had been a good man, honest and loyal. If Santini had indeed killed him, then Sophia had every reason to seek revenge. "What do you propose?" he asked carefully. "We expose Santini tonight in front of everyone," Sophia said. "We reveal his conspiracy, his treachery, his plans to sell the kingdom to foreign powers. We present the evidence I have gathered. And then you remove your mask and reclaim your birthright." "It is not that simple," Alessandro said. "Santini controls the palace guard. Even if we expose him, his men will simply arrest us both. We will be executed as traitors and conspirators." "Not if we have the support of the people in that ballroom," Sophia countered. "Not if we can turn the nobles against him. That is why the masquerade is perfect. Everyone is here. Every important family, every power broker, every person who matters in this kingdom. If we can win them to our side, Santini's guards will be meaningless." Alessandro considered this. It was bold, perhaps too bold, but it might work. The nobles were fickle creatures, loyal only to their own interests. If they could be convinced that supporting Alessandro was more advantageous than supporting Santini, they would turn on the Duke in an instant. "What evidence do you have?" he asked. Sophia produced a small leather folder from within her dress. Letters in Santini's own hand detailing his negotiations with foreign powers. Financial records showing bribes paid to various nobles and officials. Testimony from servants who witnessed the planning of your assassination. And most damning of all, a confession from one of the assassins who attacked you in the mountains. He survived his wounds and has been in hiding. I found him 3 weeks ago. He is here tonight, ready to speak. Alessandro took the folder and examined its contents by the light of a nearby lantern. His hands trembled slightly as he read through the documents. It was all there, everything they needed to destroy Santini. The Duke had been careless, arrogant in his certainty that no one would challenge him. "This is extraordinary," Alessandro said. "How did you obtain all of this?" "I have been working with others," Sophia replied. "A network of people who suspected something was wrong, who refused to accept the official story of your death. We have been gathering evidence for months, waiting for the right moment. Tonight is that moment." Alessandro felt a surge of hope for the first time in 6 months. He was not alone. There were still people in the kingdom who valued truth and justice, who were willing to risk everything to do what was right. "Very well," he said. "Tell me your plan." They spent the next hour on the terrace, speaking in hushed tones, refining the details of what would happen next. Sophia had positioned her allies throughout the ballroom. At a prearranged signal, they would begin spreading certain information, creating whispers and rumors that would draw everyone's attention. Then, at the height of the confusion, Sophia would call for silence and make her accusations public. The assassin would come forward and give his testimony. The documents would be displayed for all to see. And then, in the moment of greatest drama, Alessandro would remove his mask and reveal himself. The true prince returned from the dead to reclaim his throne. It was theatrical, even melodramatic, but Alessandro understood the power of spectacle. These nobles lived for drama and intrigue. They would eat this up, and in their excitement they would forget their carefully calculated political positions. They would act on emotion rather than strategy, and that would work in Alessandro's favor. "There is one more thing," Sophia said as they prepared to return to the ballroom. "Lady Caterina, she knows." Alessandro stopped. "What do you mean she knows?" "She is part of our network," Sophia explained. "Her father may have sold her to Santini, but Caterina has her own plans. She has been feeding us information from inside the Duke's circle. She is the one who obtained many of those financial records. She is risking everything to help us." Alessandro looked back toward the ballroom where he could see Caterina still dancing with his brother. She was a far better actress than he had realized. To maintain that facade while working against Santini from within required extraordinary courage and skill. "Does she know I am here?" he asked. "She suspects," Sophia said. "I told her that Lorenzo Ferretti might be more than he appeared. She will be ready when the moment comes." They returned to the ballroom separately, careful not to draw attention to their conversation. Alessandro resumed his position as an anonymous observer, watching the festivities continue. But now he saw everything differently. He began to notice Sophia's allies positioned throughout the room, recognized certain faces as people who had been loyal to his father. The network was larger than he had imagined. He also watched Caterina more carefully. She moved through the required social interactions with grace and poise, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes constantly scanned the room. She was waiting, preparing herself for what was to come. Duke Santini himself was present, of course. He stood near the throne dais, a position of honor that should have been reserved for the royal family. He was a tall man, distinguished-looking with silver hair and sharp features. His mask was minimal, barely concealing his identity. He wanted people to know who he was, to recognize his power. His arrogance would be his downfall. The evening progressed according to plan. Alessandro watched as Sophia's allies began their work, moving from group to group, planting seeds of doubt and suspicion. He heard fragments of conversation as he passed by various clusters of nobles. "I heard the Duke has been meeting with foreign ambassadors in secret. They say the financial records do not add up. That money has gone missing from the treasury. Someone told me there are questions about Prince Alessandro's death, that it might not have been an accident." The whispers spread like wildfire through the ballroom. Alessandro could see the change in atmosphere, the way people began to look at Santini with new suspicion, the way conversations became more animated and urgent. The Duke noticed it too. His expression grew darker, more guarded. He began speaking urgently to his own allies, trying to contain whatever was happening. But it was too late. The momentum had shifted. The carefully controlled environment that Santini had created was beginning to crack. At midnight, as tradition dictated, the music stopped and everyone removed their masks. This was the moment of revelation, when identities would be disclosed and the masquerade would end. But Alessandro kept his mask in place, waiting. Sophia chose this moment to act. She stepped onto a raised platform near the orchestra and called for attention. Her voice rang out clear and strong across the ballroom. "Lords and ladies of Montevard, I beg your indulgence for a moment. I have information that concerns us all, information that threatens the very foundation of our kingdom." The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. Santini began moving toward the platform, his face dark with anger, but several of Sophia's allies blocked his path, creating a human barrier that he could not easily cross without causing a scene. "6 months ago, our beloved Prince Alessandro died in what was reported as a tragic accident," Sophia continued. "Tonight, I tell you that it was no accident. It was murder orchestrated by someone in this very room." Gasps and exclamations erupted from the crowd. Dominic looked pale and confused, turning to Santini with questions in his eyes. Caterina stood very still, her expression carefully neutral. "I have evidence," Sophia declared, holding up the leather folder. "Letters, financial records, testimony from witnesses. All of it proves beyond doubt that Duke Santini conspired to murder Prince Alessandro and seize control of the kingdom." "This is outrageous," Santini roared, finally breaking through the people blocking him. "This woman is a liar and a traitor. Guards, arrest her immediately." But the guards hesitated. They looked at each other uncertainly, unsure of whom to obey. The accusations were serious, and many of them had served under the old king, had known Prince Alessandro. They wanted to hear more before acting. "Let her speak," someone called from the crowd. Others took up the cry. "Let her present her evidence." Sophia began reading from the documents, her voice steady and clear. She detailed Santini's negotiations with foreign powers, his plans to sell the kingdom's sovereignty, the bribes he had paid to secure loyalty. With each revelation, the crowd's anger grew. Nobles who had accepted Santini's money now looked uncomfortable, realizing they had been manipulated. Then the assassin stepped forward. He was a rough-looking man, still bearing scars from his wounds. He limped slightly as he approached the platform. "I was hired by Duke Santini to kill Prince Alessandro," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "I was part of a group of 5 men. We attacked the prince in the mountain pass, killed his guard who was wearing his clothes. We took the signet ring as proof. The Duke paid us well for our work." "Lies," Santini shouted. "All lies. This man is obviously a criminal, probably tortured into making false confessions." "Then explain these letters in your own hand," Sophia challenged, holding up several documents. "Explain these financial transactions. Explain why you have been meeting secretly with ambassadors from kingdoms that wish to absorb Montevard into their empires." Santini's face had gone from red to pale. He looked around the ballroom, seeing the suspicion and anger in every face. His carefully constructed power base was crumbling before his eyes. "This is a conspiracy," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Someone is trying to frame me, to destroy me because of my loyalty to the crown." "Your loyalty?" A voice rang out from the back of the ballroom. "Let us speak of loyalty, Duke Santini." Alessandro began walking forward, still wearing his mask. The crowd parted before him, sensing something momentous was about to happen. He moved with the bearing of royalty now, no longer hiding his true nature. Every eye was upon him. "Let us speak of the loyalty that leads a man to murder his prince," Alessandro continued. "The loyalty that makes him sell his kingdom to foreign powers, the loyalty that turns him into a traitor and a murderer." He reached the center of the ballroom and stopped, facing Santini directly. Then slowly and deliberately he removed his mask. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. People screamed, gasped, fell to their knees. Some thought they were seeing a ghost. Others immediately recognized the truth. Prince Alessandro lived. "No," Santini whispered, his face a mask of horror. "You are dead. I saw the ring. I had confirmation." "You had confirmation that someone died wearing my ring," Alessandro said coldly. "But that someone was not me. I have been living among you for 6 months, watching, learning, gathering evidence of your treachery, and now, before all these witnesses, I reclaim what is mine." Dominic stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. "Brother, is it truly you?" "It is," Alessandro said, his voice softening slightly. "I know you were not part of this conspiracy, Dominic. You were manipulated, used as a pawn, but I am here now and things will be set right." Dominic fell to his knees. "Thank God, I never wanted this. I never wanted you dead. I have been living in a nightmare, unable to escape, unable to stop what was happening." Alessandro placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I know. Rise, brother, you are not my enemy." The palace guards, seeing their true prince alive and hearing the evidence of Santini's treachery, finally acted. They surrounded the duke, weapons drawn. Santini looked around wildly, seeking escape, but there was none. His allies had already melted away, eager to distance themselves from his crimes. "You cannot do this," Santini said desperately. "I have powerful friends. Foreign armies will come to my aid." "Those foreign armies will find no welcome here," Alessandro replied. "And your powerful friends will abandon you now that your usefulness is ended. You are finished, Santini. You will stand trial for treason and murder. Justice will be served." As the guards led Santini away, the ballroom erupted in cheers. Nobles rushed forward to pledge their loyalty to Alessandro, each trying to outdo the others in their protestations of devotion. Alessandro accepted their homage with grace, though he knew many of them were merely opportunists who would have supported whoever held power. Lady Caterina approached, and the crowd fell silent, curious to see what would happen. She curtsied deeply before Alessandro. "My prince," she said formally. "I am glad to see justice done this night." "Rise, Lady Caterina," Alessandro said. "I understand I owe you a debt of gratitude. Your courage and intelligence have helped save the kingdom." "I did only what was right," she replied. "Your engagement to my brother is dissolved, of course," Alessandro continued. "You should be free to choose your own path." Caterina smiled slightly. "I am grateful for that freedom, Your Highness." Alessandro studied her thoughtfully. She was remarkable, this woman who had risked everything to fight corruption from within. Beautiful, yes, but more importantly, intelligent, brave, and principled. The kingdom would need people like her in the difficult days ahead. But that was a thought for another time. Tonight was about reclaiming what had been lost, about justice and truth prevailing over deception and treachery. The celebration continued long into the night, but Alessandro eventually slipped away to visit his father. The old king lay in his chambers, attended by physicians. He was indeed dying, just as Alessandro had learned. But when Alessandro entered the room and removed his mask, the king's eyes opened wide with joy and disbelief. "My son," he whispered, "they told me you were dead." "I live, father," Alessandro said, taking the old man's hand. "And the kingdom is safe. The conspiracy has been exposed. Santini will face justice." Tears rolled down the king's weathered cheeks. "I knew something was wrong, I felt it, but I was too weak, too ill to act. Forgive me, my son." "There is nothing to forgive," Alessandro said gently. "Rest now, all is well." The king smiled and closed his eyes, finally at peace. He died 3 days later, content in the knowledge that his kingdom would pass to the right son, that the succession was secure. Alessandro's coronation was held 1 month later, a grand affair that brought nobles and commoners together in celebration. He had spent that month rooting out the last of Santini's conspirators, restructuring the government, and beginning the work of repairing the damage that had been done. Santini himself was tried, convicted, and executed for treason. His co-conspirators received varying sentences based on their level of involvement. Some were executed, others imprisoned, still others merely stripped of titles and lands. Alessandro proved to be a wise and just ruler, beloved by his people. He never forgot the lessons he had learned during his months of living as Lorenzo Ferretti, seeing the kingdom through the eyes of ordinary citizens. He implemented reforms, fought corruption, and worked tirelessly to improve the lives of all his subjects. As for Lady Katerina, she became one of his most trusted advisors, her intelligence and political acumen invaluable in the complex work of governing. Whether their relationship would ever become something more remained to be seen. For now, they were allies and friends, united in their dedication to the kingdom's welfare. The Masquerade Ball became legend, the night when truth triumphed over deception, when a prince returned from the dead to save his kingdom. It was a story told and retold, embellished and elaborated, passed down through generations. But at its heart, it remained a simple tale of courage, justice, and the power of truth. Prince Alessandro had worn a mask to hide his identity, but in doing so, he had revealed the true faces of those around him. The masquerade had unveiled not just one mystery, but many, exposing corruption and treachery while also revealing unexpected allies and heroes. In the end, destiny had indeed been served, though not in the way anyone had expected. The prince who was supposed to be dead had instead become the savior of his kingdom, and the Masquerade Ball had become the stage for one of history's most dramatic revelations.